Today, we're all about sausage. I've done a lot of work experimenting with sausage of different types, different kinds, different methods and everything, and I've come up with a way that I believe that will allow me to freeze dry and package for long-term sausage that isn't granulated. Now, I've done granulated sausage before, just bulk sausage like this cooked in a pan, but I've always taken it and rinsed it off and so as to get all the grease off of it, and then so that I could package it for long-term storage. But I understand that when you do that with sausage, you're going to rinse away a lot of the flavor. Now, in the past, I've added sausage seasonings to it to supplement that. But now, I think I've come up with a really good way of freeze-drying sausage in patties and links and in Italian sausages, the larger links, and even these brown and serve pre-cooked, so that we can completely get rid of the oil, and it will be good to go as far as putting it into a long-term storage. You can either put it in jars or you can put it in Mylar bags and vacuum pack it. And with that, I'm Evan Rowell, and this is Critical Thinking about sausage. A while back I was browsing around Walmart looking for something that I could freeze dry that I hadn't freeze dried before, and I picked up a bag of these. These are Brown and Serve Banquet. They're the economy brand, but they are pre-cooked. All you got to do is heat them up and serve them, and they're fairly good. They're tasty. They are not all pork. These things got pork and chicken, and mechanically separated chicken, and some soy protein and whatnot. And if you don't know what mechanically separated means, is they'll take the chicken and they'll coarsely grind it up, bones and all, and then they'll force it through a sieve. And that sieve has little tiny holes on it, and anything that'll come through that sieve is what they use. And any of the bone material and stuff that won't go through the sieve, it comes out the end of the sieve, and that's what gets discarded, or they use it somewhere else. But that's how they mechanically separate chicken. So these aren't the highest quality sausages you can get. But I thought, well, what the heck, I'm going to go ahead and freeze dry them and see how it works. So I brought home a package, and I found out there's approximately 50 links in one of these packages. And I found out one package will fill one pan. So I went ahead and freeze dried it. When I took it out, I was very dismayed. Well, actually, I kind of expected it. But I found that the sausages were all sitting in grease, and liquefied grease. Because admittedly, there's a lot of grease in those sausages. And I was looking at it, and I thought, wow, that's too bad. I guess we're not going to be able to freeze dry these sausages. But then I got to looking at the sausage links that I took off the pan, and I broke one in half. And although the bottom quarter of that sausage had oil on it, it wasn't a lot, but it had enough oil on it that I knew I wasn't going to be able to package it. And, because I could feel it, and I could rub it between my fingers, and I could feel that oily residue. But then I noticed the top 3/4 of each one of those links was absolutely dry. Didn't have any oil on it, which told me that during the freeze-dry process, the oil was settling down. It was going all the way down, and it was actually leaking out onto the pan, leaving liquefied oil on the bottom of the pan. And the problem was that the sausage was sitting in that oil, and that's why I ended up, I didn't even package them. I could have packaged them. They'd have probably lasted for about 5 years, used within 5 years if I wanted to, but I knew there was a better way. So I went ahead and used those, and they did reconstitute very well. And I just put them in water until they were soft again, and put them in a pan and fried them up and ate them with eggs. And so they were good. Okay, they're tasty, and they're not real expensive. I think this package right here cost about $6.50 to $7. But anyhow, I got to thinking, I've done sausage before, and like this, and cooked it in a skillet. And then afterwards, I drained off the oil and then poured the meat into a colander and rinsed it with very hot water to rinse that oil off of there. And it works really, really well. Okay, the sausage freeze-dried really well. But I was concerned about the fact that rinsing it with really hot water was also rinsing off the flavor. And I got to thinking, is there a way to do sausage like you can any other meat, that you can do meat raw? You can, I like to cook my meat, but if you do it raw, you still rinse it off and everything, but you're not rinsing away the flavor. But you do with sausage. And so after I'd finished working with this Banquet brown and serve, I got to thinking, you know, there's got to be a way to do sausage without having to rinse away all the flavor. You know, before I did add some seasoning, some sausage seasonings to it to kind of supplement what I rinsed off. So I tried a little experiment, and it worked out marvelously. It worked out really, really well. And what I did is I thought, you know, since that oil wants to come off of that sausage and it wants to go to the bottom, it needs something to go into so that it won't stay in the sausage itself. Now, I could put a wire rack on here and just try to let it drip off, but that wasn't good enough, okay? What it needed, it had to be in contact with something that was literally going to wick the oil off of the meat. And what I did is I came up with this idea, and it worked really well. I went down to Home Depot, and I found these packages of these microfiber cloth, you know, utility wipes. They were about $9 for like 24 of them. And I take them, and I fold them up in such a way as that they will fit in the pan, okay? And I did a bag of these here a few days ago, and they came out. Sure enough, the oil, and it wasn't soggy oil, but you could tell that the microfiber cloth had soaked up all of that oil, and there was such a small amount left in the sausages themselves that I have absolutely no concern about bagging them and vacuum packing them for long-term storage. Because, you know, you got to think about it. No matter what you do to meat, you're going to have some oil left in the meat when you package it for long-term storage. And if you can package minute amounts of oil still in the meat for long-term storage without it going rancid, because, you know, it won't, it really has to be in a bulk situation for oil to go rancid. It will last for a very long time. And so I did that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you exactly how I did all of this. Now, we're going to do some of these Johnsonville, they're Italian sausage links. They're the bigger ones. I'm going to do some regular sausage links. These are just the great value, they're economy, but these are the regular breakfast sausage links that you would eat. And I'm also going to do some patties to see if the shape of the sausage, being a patty or a link, makes any difference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not going to put these in the pans just yet. As a matter of fact, I'll probably put those back in the freezer for right now and put them in later, because what I want to do is I want to do all of this sausage and see how far the pans fill up, and then when I have extra space, I'll go ahead and put those brown and serve in there. So what I'm going to do first is I'll take this and I'm going to pan fry it, okay, just like I would regular sausage. But this time, although I will drain it and very lightly rinse it, I'm not going to, you know, do like I usually do and just rinse it with hot water all over the place and completely squeeze all the flavor off of it. But and then I'm going to put it in a pan, but it's going to go on top of these microfiber cloths that go in here. Now, I don't put the silicone mat underneath these cloths. There's underneath these cloths, it's bare. There's no mat under there. Okay, and then what I'll do after that is this stuff I will not pan fry. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to lay this out on these oven racks. I got these at Walmart, and I'll lay them out on here, and I will put them in the oven. and I will cook them in the oven about 375 degrees, and I'll watch them very carefully because you don't want to overcook them. One of the worst things you can do if you're going to freeze dry sausage is overcook it. Cook it so that when you pick it up, it's got that hard, crusty surface on it, like some people like their sausages and their bacon to be hard and crusty. But you want to cook these. Now I understand that this is pork, and you have to cook pork to, I believe it's about 160 to 175 degrees. For food safety, okay? So you want to make sure that they're absolutely cooked, but you don't want to cook them to the point where you're turning them into little tiny pieces of wood and stuff like that. You still want them to be soft, because if they're really hard, it's going to make it difficult for the oil to render out of the center of it, onto this terry cloth or this microfiber cloth here. So, and also, I'm going to do a couple of these raw. So I'm going to do 4 of these. I'm going to cook them, put them on these racks here, and I'm going to keep one of them out raw. So I'm going to put one here raw to see how these will render, how the fat will render out of these when they're raw. I'm going to do the same thing with these links right here. I'll take about 4 of them and I'll put them on one of these raw to see how that does, and I will cook or kind of blanch or cook completely. Remember, it has to be cooked completely. This is pork. You don't want to mess around with pork, but don't cook it to the point where it is really hard. You still want it to be soft and kind of spongy in your fingers. And I will do the same with the patties, okay? And after I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and do all of that. And when I'm done and I've got them all laid out and the sausage is cooked, I'll come right back and we'll go from there. Okay. We went ahead and we've got, I went ahead and cooked that sausage here. And, you know, oddly enough, there wasn't very much oil in the bottom of the pan. There was actually very little. It was just a kind of residue. So I didn't even bother rinsing it off. I just went ahead and put it straight from the skillet into this pan on top of this cloth. Now, incidentally, before I had tried to use paper towels, and although I put 4 layers of paper towels in there, it didn't work as well. It didn't wick the oil as well as the microfiber cloths did. So I went ahead and said, you know, what the heck? There was actually far less oil in the Jimmy Dean pork sausage than there was in this banquet brown and serve when I did them before. So I just went ahead and put that in there. I put the rest of the sausage on the 2 pans, and incidentally, here are the raw. I've got 1 of the large sausages, I've got 4 links, and I've got 2 patties. So they're going to go in there just like that. We're going to see how they turn out, freeze drying them on top of this microfiber material, or these cloths. But these I covered with tin foil so that it would hold in the heat, and we'd get it would sweat all that oil and everything off of it, and it did. Not nearly as much as I would have expected, but I'm going to go ahead now and put these on the pans and get them in the freeze dryer. Now these will take about maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to freeze dry sufficiently, and then we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take one of these pans, and I'm going to start with the large sausages. Oh, and incidentally, let's go ahead and cut one of these in half just to make sure that they turned out the way that I wanted them to. Fact of the matter is, I left them in there about 45 minutes. I wanted to make sure that they were thoroughly cooked, so I'm going to take and cut the end off of one of these. And it is. It's absolutely, it's thoroughly cooked. Yep. Those are ready for the freeze dryer. So we'll just we'll start stacking these in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this. Give me a few minutes, and I'll be right back. I'm going to get all this put onto the trays, okay? Okay, so there you have it. Everything fit on those 4 trays, just exactly as I had hoped they would and expected that they would. That one bag of those pre-cooked brown and serve, the whole bag fit exactly into one pan. They're crowded, but that's okay because I found that once they freeze dry and all that oil sucks out of them, they will shrink a little bit and there'll be plenty of space, so those will be fine. Here's my uncooked, my cooked, the brown and serve, the sausages, the link sausages, and of course the Jimmy Dean pork sausage. So now all of this is going to go into the freezer. It'll go in for 4 to 5 hours, maybe 6, depending upon how late I want to wait tonight to put them in. But then I believe, now with sausage I found that most of the time I will take the food out when the regular drying cycle is over and it goes into its extra dry time. And I find that the extra dry time is just that, it's extra dry time. And so I don't really think it's necessary most of the time, but these I will. These will actually be dry probably in about 24 to 26 hours of drying, or when I put them in there, not counting the freeze cycle. But I'm going to leave them in there anywhere from 36 to 40 hours, so that when they come out, because this is meat, it does have an oil content, and I want to give it the maximum time that I can to allow that grease to be wicked out of the meat and into those microfiber cloths. So with that, give me about 2 days, and I'll be back right here with these completely freeze-dried, and we'll take a look at them. Okay, it took about 26 to 28 hours to completely dry all this, which was shorter than I expected it to be. However, I've never done 4 trays of just sausage before, so this dried fairly quickly compared to other things, or in other words, to anything else, it was about normal. It didn't take any longer. However, I did let it go through 12 hours of extra dry time, so you can see it actually only took about 14 hours for the freeze-dry cycle to finish. So these freeze-dried in about 14 hours, and then it had another 12 hours of extra dry time before I took them out. And I have learned a lot, and I'll tell you what, I made a mistake here, or there was something I didn't think about, and I'm going to let you in on that. It's actually kind of comical. But the one thing that you need to learn, or you need to know about doing meats with a high fat content, is that when ice sublimates, it will actually carry some of that grease with it. That's why you need to do spring cleaning in your kitchen once a year and wipe the grease off the top of the shelves and off the walls and everything, because steam and vapors will pick up the grease. And so normally I pull my shelves out of my freeze dryer and I tip them forward and I wipe them down completely about every 5 or 6 batches. But you need to be sure that if you're going to do something like this, you need to take that shelf and wipe it out, because it will have a very fine greasy residue on it that you're going to need to wipe off. And in order to help you do that, try to do it at the end of a defrost cycle when you can pull the tray out while it's still warm, and that grease will come off readily. And I use a little bit of Windex, which isn't going to hurt it, and I just kind of wipe things down. It takes a few extra minutes, but if you're going to do this, you're going to need to keep that in mind. Now, the microfiber cloth experiment, it worked to an extent, okay? And so let's go through these things one at a time and show you what I learned. Now, here is that sausage, the Jimmy Dean sausage that I pan fried, and broke up and granulated. And it came out fairly good, but remember, I didn't rinse this off. I just wanted to see how the microfiber cloth would do at pulling the grease off of this. And it did. It pulled it off. This is still crunchy. It's very dry, but if you handle it in your hands, and I did, it will leave a very thin layer of grease on your hands. And that's something that hasn't happened in the past when I have rinsed this stuff off. However, if you look at here, there was a lot of grease in this microfiber cloth. So this microfiber cloth did do its job. It did pull a lot of grease off of there, but because I didn't rinse it off, it still has left a grease film to the point where if it wouldn't bother me to put this in a Mylar bag and package it, but I would put it in my 5-year bin. Nothing that goes into my 5-year bin is going to last longer than 5 years. As a matter of fact, I will start pulling things out and using them after 3 to 4 years. So I'm quite sure that this granulated sausage would do quite well. But I'm going to do this whole thing over again, and I'm going to incorporate some changes. And what I'm going to do and what I'm going to change with this is I'll still use the clean microfiber cloth, but I'm going to rinse in very hot water this sausage after I cook it. And I'm not going to rinse it like I usually do, because when I usually do, boy, I stir it and I rinse it and I stir it again and I rinse it and everything. I'm going to rinse it very lightly. I'm going to try to rinse away as much of the hot water or as much of the oil as I can. And here's something that I did notice also. On all of these, when they got put into the freezer, and I pulled the pans out of the freezer, getting ready to put them into the freeze dryer, I noticed that grease, when it's frozen, turns white. And so these, especially these sausage patties, had little white specks on the top of them, indicating that there was grease that I could have taken off. And I'm going to do that next time. So that's what I'm going to do with these, is I'm going to do it exactly the same, only I'm going to rinse it off fairly well before I put it in the freezer. Now these are the pre-baked, or let's see which one. Oh no, these are the sausage links. And they still have sufficient oil inside of them that they bend. But I was looking at one of these, and it looked like it had this end right here was very, very dry. It cracks just like a cookie. You can't feel any grease or anything in it. So this is okay. But right here in the middle, I'm looking at it and I'm going, what is that? And then all of a sudden, big light bulb. Oh my heavens, what was I thinking? These sausages are packed in a plastic, or an edible plastic casing, which isn't going to allow, see, I'm peeling some of it off right now. And I just felt so silly not figuring this out to begin with. You see that hanging there, that little plastic casing? And underneath where that plastic casing was, it is still pliable, it's still soft. The grease inside of it was still there. It wasn't able to render down like I wanted it to. So I'm not even going to bother. Look at that. I'm peeling that casing right off of there. Now, I guess if you want to do link sausages, you could take each individual one, cut that plastic, I don't know what you call it, a pouch or the plastic tube, and peel it off of there, each one of them, and then cook your sausage and do it that way. But that's really labor intensive. I probably will not do these sausages this way, this way again. I just think it would be too work intensive. By the time you finish cutting that tube off of every one of these, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of sausage like you have here. They're not going to hold their shape and everything. So for all intents and purposes, for me, doing link sausage was a failure. At least doing it this way, it was a failure. And here is here's one of the uncooked ones. Again, the ends were dry. They were absolutely dry, but the middle still, you can see the oil inside the middle one. So you can do sausage without cooking it first, but you have to make sure that you're not doing sausage links. All right? So what I'm going to do is I still want to be able to do sausage links, But I thought, you know, there's no reason that you have to use sausage links that are already formed. I happen to have a jerky gun, which is just a big tube that I can fill with jerky meat and squeeze it out, and in the end I can squeeze it out in links about that size, you know, great big long rope, or I have another tip that I can squeeze it out in the wide flat sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the regular Jimmy Deans, just the same stuff as I did here, and I'm going to pack it in that tube, and then I'm going to squeeze it out on that rack that I use, that you saw me use for these, and I'm going to cook it in the oven, same way as I did with these. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is after it's cooked, I will take it and I will take those links and I will run them under some very, very hot water to see if I can get as much grease off of that link as I can. Now here's something to remember. When it comes to meat, fat isn't the problem. Okay, that white marbly material on the meat, that's not the problem. What the problem is the grease that's in that fat. So just because you're going to freeze dry something, you can still see those little white pieces of fat ground up into it, if it's ground beef or ground pork or sausage or whatever. That doesn't mean that there's any oil in there, okay? Because the fat, that white fat material can be there without having any oil into it, and that's why you cook it, and that's why you rinse it. So what I'm going to do, like I say, I'm going to form my own link sausages, and then I'll rinse them, and then I'll put them again on the microfiber cloth, and we'll go ahead and freeze dry them there. Now here is that pre-baked, pre-cooked, I should say, sausage, and they turned out just exactly the same way as they did before, but I still would only put them in my 5-year bucket because I wasn't quite sure of how, but if you'll notice, that snapped. There's no bend to it at all. You can stick your fingernail inside the end there. There's no grease at all. This microfiber cloth, which incidentally did come out with, you could feel the grease in it. So this microfiber cloth did do an excellent job of pulling the grease. There was no, 1/4 of it down here that was still greasy or anything like that. So I was very satisfied with this. This worked very, very well. However, I am going to do something different. I have 2 more bags of this stuff, and I'm going to do them both. But what I will do is I'll pour these frozen links into a colander, and I will rinse them off as well as I can with very, very hot water. Now that's going to defrost them, but I don't care. I'll just put them back in here, and they're going to freeze again right along with everything else. But the reason that I want to do that is I got to looking at these when I was putting them in there, and even frozen, because grease turns white, you could see the grease on the outside. Now again, the grease was very effectively pulled off of these things by the microfiber cloth. However, I still think it would be better if you rinsed all that external grease off with hot water as best you can before refreezing them. So I'm going to do that. I'll either blanch them. I haven't decided. I'll either blanch them or I'll put them in a colander and just rinse the what grease off of it that I can. Now here are those patties. The patties turned out better. I could see the grease build up on these when I froze them, because like I say, the grease turns white. And so I froze them, and after they were cooked and frozen and everything, and I put them on the microfiber cloth, and well, they turned out fairly well. I can break these, and although they almost snap, you can tell that there's just a little bit of oil left in there. So these will go in my 5-year bin. However, and if you'll notice, there was very little grease that was pulled off of these onto the microfiber. I can feel it there. Some of it did come off, but the percentage in here is still high enough that I will rinse these again. And when I do that, I will take the patty, and here's the raw one. As a matter of fact, it's funny. The raw one turned out even better. It's just as dry and breaks like a cookie. There's no oil to be felt inside of there. You know, I can rub my finger on it and I don't feel an oil residue. So you know, you might want to consider just doing sausage patties completely raw. I'm not going to do it. I don't like to freeze dry raw meat, but these actually turned out better when it comes to oil than the cooked ones did, and which was a real surprise to me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, and before I cook them, I'll put them down and I'll squash them, because right now they're about maybe a ½ inch thick, and I think it would cook and freeze dry, and you'd get the oil off of it better if you squash them. Squash them down to about 3/8 or maybe even a ¼ inch, and then freeze them, and then cook them, freeze them, then cook them, rinse them, and then freeze them, and then freeze dry them, and I'm sure that they'll come out a lot better. Now, here was the one for me that was almost laughable. The sausages. Now again, I'm going to do these sausages over, but look at this one. This is the one that I didn't cook. It feels like a sack of mush. And the reason for that is, again, because these sausages are packed in a plastic casing, which absolutely does not allow them to dry. But the funny thing is I was looking at it and I was noticing the very ends are hard. They are absolutely freeze-dried. This one and this one, because those are the ends of the sausage that were sticking out the end of this plastic container or tube or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm thinking, you know, perhaps if I take the sausage and cut this plastic off of it first and then flatten it out a little bit, I'll be able to do sausages. So I've got another package of these, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And funny thing is look at this one. Remember when I cut the end of it off to see if it was cooked? The end of this thing is hard, and it's hard all the way back to about a little over a quarter, maybe 3/8 of an inch. Which means that it was losing its moisture, it was losing its oil. It doesn't feel oily, but this does, and it's very pliable. And then again, the end was, you can feel a little hard nub here where that plastic tube came to an end. So when I do these over again, I will cut the plastic tube off of them and peel it off, and then I'll flatten them out a little bit, and then I'll cook them. And then I will also rinse them, okay? Because I've decided that after all this experimentation, it's always better, even if you're going to lose a little bit of flavor, for which I have a bottle of sausage seasoning that you can sprinkle back over it when you put it in the freeze dryer after you've rinsed it, and let that rinse water, that hot water, solidify or dissolve that seasoning, and you'll get some of your sausage seasoning back. So the one thing that I have discovered is, even though you're using microfiber cloths, they will work under certain circumstances. They didn't work for this because, well, it couldn't because of that plastic. It barely worked for this, but only because there wasn't very much oil on there to begin with. It worked very well for the banquet, pre-cooked, brown and serve. But like I say, I will use the microfiber cloths with these again, only I'm not going to cook them. I'm not going to heat them up or put them in boiling water and let them boil or anything like that. I'll just take them frozen, and I will hit them with hot water to rinse them off. I will not do the store-bought sausage links anymore, because I think it's just too much of a hassle to try to take that casing off of them. And instead, I'll just buy the big pack of sausage, the Jimmy Dean sausage, and I'll put it into a jerky gun, and I will squeeze out a bunch of rows of sausage that look about like this. You know, they're about that round, and then I'll go along with a pair of scissors and cut them up into lengths, and I'll cook them that way, and then I will rinse them. All of these things, the only thing that's going to be done the same on all of them is that I will rinse all of them in very hot water to get rid of what oil I can, and I will still use the microfiber cloth to so that it will pull out everything that it can, because you know when they get hot, if there's any oil inside, it tends to want to come to the bottom or spread itself out, and if this microfiber cloth is there on the bottom, it'll actually help wick some of this stuff out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these bags. I'm not going to bag them up right now. However, I will take all of these and I'm going to put them in a 2-gallon Mylar bag, and I'm going to seal them up, and I'm going to draw the vacuum across them, but only because I want to be able to open it up after I do the next batch, which will be the next video. So you're going to want to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified when the part 2 of my sausage videos comes out. I'll be able to say, okay, here's what I have the first time, and here's what I had the second time after I made some changes to the process. And so you're going to want to watch that. So anyhow, that's what we have. As usual, I hope that you'll like, share, subscribe. You know the routine. And then for sure, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when the next video comes out, wherein I do all of this over again, but I make the necessary changes so that you'll be able to store sausage long term, and that's longer than 5 years. Okay, with that, I'm Evan Rowell, and this is Critical Thinking, Part 1 about sausage.